Renowned physician and former cabinet member Dr. Ben Carson entered the perspective set completely, understanding the difficulties he was about to encounter. He was renowned for his composed manner and steadfast conservative views. Carson entered one of the most contentious political arenas on daytime television, so he wasn't merely there for a simple conversation.
Welcome to Hot Topics, Dr. Ben Carson. Hey.
Whoopi Goldberg and the other panelists were prepared to face him. Thus, it was set up for a heated showdown that would be broadcast to millions of viewers. The tension in the room was almost tangible as Carson sat down, and she didn't waste any time getting right to the point. Her tone was sharp, and her expression was firm as she leaned forward and asked how a man with Carson's background, an accomplished black surgeon who had devoted his life to saving others, could associate with someone as divisive as Donald Trump. She listed the charges against Trump, including his divisive policies, inflammatory rhetoric, and legal issues.
I hate to ask this question, but you have aligned yourself with a man who has bashed women, made countless racist remarks, and you're Ben Carson. Why would you align yourself with that?
She didn't mince words. She wanted answers. Carson, however, maintained his composure and spoke in a steady, unyielding tone. Instead of becoming defensive, he took a deep breath and clarified that his support was based on policy rather than personality. He acknowledged that Trump wasn't always careful with his words and wasn't a perfect man, but Carson maintained that his actions spoke louder than how the media portrayed him. He noted that historically, Trump had challenged the status quo, including racial discrimination in elite circles. He reminded the audience that when Trump first arrived in Palm Beach, Florida, many exclusive clubs refused to admit Black and Jewish members instead of adhering to those traditions. Trump promoted inclusivity and dismantled long-standing racial barriers.
Perfect person.
No, I know that.
But you know, you look at when Donald Trump first went down to Palm Beach area, and you know, a lot of the clubs down there would not accept Jews and blacks. He insisted on Jews and blacks and helped to break that open.
Whoopi wasn't content, so she prodded him harder and folded her arms, bringing up Trump's past racial bigotry, litigation, especially those pertaining to his real estate company. She asked why Carson was so prepared to ignore these earlier occurrences. Carson abruptly changed the subject, claiming that it was incorrect to concentrate on previous accusations rather than the current outcomes.
So is that what this is about?
No,
it can't be about that.
No, but here's my point. My point is he and some of the other politicians, they do what people want.
He highlighted how Black communities' employment rates had increased under the Trump administration, because the discussion intensified when Joy Behar interrupted, reminding Carson that Trump had previously made fun of him during the 2016 election. HBCU enacted criminal justice reform measures that benefited minorities disproportionately impacted by the justice system and awarded permanent grants to both institutions. Republican primaries also implied that Carson struggled with anger management, so she turned to face him and inquired, "How can you back a person who made fun of you on a national level?" Without hesitation, Carson rejected the previous conflicts as a natural part of politics, explaining that rivals frequently attack one another during campaigns, but that what was really important was the future of the nation.
But the lying that he does is continuous. It's on a regular basis.
Well, again,
Fact check goes berserk when he talks. He's got a long Pinocchio nose.
In the same way that he assessed leadership, rather than accepting media reports at face value, Trump personally according to deeds and outcomes. As the conversation went on, Carson underlined that Trump had truly implemented concrete measures that helped Americans in contrast to career politicians who merely made promises. The other co-hosts then joined in with their own criticisms. With numerous charges against him, Sonny H. questioned Carson about Trump's treatment of women and how a devout guy like Carson could stand behind someone with such a contentious past. Carson answered coolly, reminding everyone that no politician was perfect.
Do you really think that Trump is correct in saying that people will, be up in arms, quote unquote riot, he said that, if they did not choose him as the nominee?
I don't think that there would be a physical riot, but I think
He wasn't-
we have to be willing to stand up for what we believe,
Yeah.
the people of the United States, because the
vote.
politicians will
And
respond to that.
This is true. So,
Right there and
folks,
vote.
get out and vote for who you think is going to run the run the country, whoever it is. Thank you for coming back, Dr. Ben Carson. We will be right back.
And lastly, I just want to say, you know, when I was running for president against Donald J. Trump, at one of the debates, when we were being announced, I couldn't hear my name. All the other candidates walked past me. He came and stood beside me until they rectified the situation. He stood beside me in a time of confusion, and I guarantee you, he will stand beside you and the United States of America in this time.
You know how they say it's dirty? Politics is dirty. Okay. Well, if there's anybody that's going to know if it is or if it isn't. So is it dirtier than you thought, or is it dirty as exactly how dirty you thought it was going to be?
Well, when I went there, I knew it was a swamp. I found out it was worse than that. It's a cesspool.
Can you unpack that? You know, examples of why you think it is.
Well, for instance, I was convinced that if I became Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, we would be able to put forward programs that would allow people, through their own efforts, to climb out of poverty. And I said everybody should be on board with this. And I was pretty amazed with how vehemently opposed some people on the Hill were to people becoming independent. Because if people become independent, you can't control their votes.
He then shifted the conversation to the shortcomings of previous administrations, raising the question of why those other presidents who made promises of reform but never followed through were not subjected to the same difficult inquiries. The discussion turned to Carson's position as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, as Whoopi became increasingly irate. She accused him of neglecting to solve systematic housing concerns and asserted that the programs he oversaw significantly poorer communities were harmed. Carson remained composed and pushed back, stating that his goal was to empower people rather than encourage reliance on the government. He also shared anecdotes of effective housing initiatives that had assisted individuals in escaping poverty and becoming self-sufficient, highlighting the significance of personal accountability and financial literacy. The audience was responding audibly to the back-and-forth discussions by this time, with those who agreed with Carson nodding in agreement at his solid comments, while supporters of the opposing viewpoint roared as they challenged him. Social media was already aflutter, with videos of the episode going viral in a matter of minutes. Not only did Carson's appearance draw a lot of notice, but it was also the divergent viewpoints. On the one hand, the panel saw Trump as a divisive personality who had deeply wounded Americans. The opposite of society, Carson viewed Trump as a trailblazer who, in spite of his weaknesses, had brought forth important reforms that helped a lot of Americans. As the interview came to an end, Whoopi made a final jab, asking Carson if he ever worried about how history would view him for supporting Trump. The debate mirrored the wider political divide in the nation. Should policies and results take precedence over a leader's personal character? With an inscrutable smile, Carson said that history would judge all leaders and that the outcomes would ultimately speak for themselves. As usual, following a politically charged interview, social media exploded and the internet was split. Carson's admirers commended him for maintaining his composure in such a moment. Under pressure, he claimed to have revealed the bias of the media and the opinion's inability to engage in fair debates. However, he was accused by his detractors of avoiding difficult inquiries and failing to hold Trump responsible regardless of one's position. One thing was certain: Carson's visit on The View was more than just another interview. It was a representation of the profound rifts in American politics, a conflict between opposing viewpoints, and an event that would be discussed for weeks to come. Although the discussion had come to a conclusion, The arguments it had sparked were far from over.